So to start us off tonight, I want everybody to go back in time. I want you to remember when you were just 5 years old. Think about it. Remember those days of creating imaginary worlds and imaginary characters? Remember dressing up in your parents' clothes and parading around the lawn? Remember playing in your attic or in the basement or maybe under the porch and creating a language that only you and your best friend knew about? Any of you remember those days? Those are the days of make-believe play. And as someone who grew up in a rural area of a small town in Wisconsin with no siblings and no neighbors, I know all too well the basic constructs of make-believe play. But what is make-believe play? What is play? Let's define it. Well, Dr. Stuart Brown is a renowned psychiatrist and founder of the National Institute for Play. And he defines play in a way that I really love. He says, play is something that's done for its own sake. It's voluntary, it's pleasurable, it offers a sense of engagement, it takes us out of time, and most importantly, the act itself is more important than the outcome. And believe it or not, by the age of 5, we are using about 80% of our creative potential. We're creating day in and day out, and for those of you that have young kids, I'm sure you can relate to this and you know what I mean. I think back to my own childhood. And between the ages of 5 and 10, I put on so many improvised plays for my parents that they eventually gave me a video camera and when I was supposed to record those plays so they could watch them at their convenience. There's hours and hours and hours of footage on those tapes. And you'll see here, yeah. It's going to make great blackmail material later. Mm-hmm. But what does playing and pretending and creating really do to us and for us? And from here on out, I'm going to use those terms kind of interchangeably as a kind of a broader concept. Well, what if I told you that playing and make-believe can really benefit us as humans? It's really essential for us, not just as kids, but adults as well. Well, in telling you that, I would be totally justified and validated for all those years of putting on those make-believe plays and videos for my parents. In fact, I just recently went home and watched a couple of those videos. I have 2 great plots to share with you today. And one of them was I videotaped myself playing with a shoe, a light bulb, and a troll with neon green hair. That was a great plot. I have no idea. Another plot was I was videotaping myself vacuuming the entire house, pretending the vacuum was a dog, all while singing the soundtrack to Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Right. So, really great plots for you. But when I think about creating and imagining and playing, there actually is some science behind it. And so I'm going to talk about a few factors here today that I think are most important and have some scientific and research basis. First, kids who engage in make-believe play reason better with counterfactuals. And that is to say, they can look back at a period in time and they can say, well, if only I had done this, this might have happened. Or, if I had done A, then B might have occurred, which is a really important concept for kids to learn. There are also numerous cognitive benefits to play and make-believe, such as increase in language ability, both speaking and understanding language. Then there's divergent thinking. So when we're make-believing, that's actually integrating seemingly separate content, which results in an increased ability for kids to think in a divergent way. And I'm reminded of this in my own life when I think back to my childhood. My parents, we never kept plants. They always died. I'm not sure what we did. But one of my great ideas is I was going to put a TV show on about this, and I did, called The Plant Show, in which I proceeded to cut off all the leaves of the plants in my entire house because I thought that was the best way for them to grow. Needless to say, my parents were not happy, and that episode 2 of that show did not air. Mm-hmm. And then speaking about emotions, kids who engage in make-believe play express both positive and negative emotions and a wide range of emotions. And they're also better able to integrate thinking with feeling, which is a very important concept. And as someone who is currently studying psychology, specifically counseling, we are always taught to help our clients and for ourselves to be aware of our thoughts and our feelings because ultimately those are what lead to our actions. And our actions are what we all see in society. Then you have self-regulation. And this is important because kids are able to better regulate their emotions. This results in reduced aggression, reduced anger, delay of gratification, and then increased civility and increased empathy with other kids, which is very important. And then we have social skills. So of course, kids who are engaging in make-believe play are building relationships and characters, and they are founding those social skills that are very important, and they're able to better overcome obstacles within their relationships at a very young age. So early imaginative play is also associated with increased creative performance later on in life. Dr. Ruth Bernstein is a professor at Michigan State University. And he did research with Nobel Prize winners as well as MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant winners. And his research found that all those recipients had extreme exposure to make-believe play. My mom and dad are still waiting for my Nobel Prize. But they did allow me to attend a university in Wisconsin where I received my undergraduate degrees in music and theater, so those made-up plays and TV shows did not go to waste, don't worry. Then there was another researcher that did research on the other end of the spectrum. So we have our Nobel Prize winners, and then Dr. Brown, who I mentioned before, did research with murderers. He went back to the 1960s with the Texas Tower murderers, as well as 2007 with the Virginia Tech murderers. And what he found is those individuals and those families had a suppression and a lack of developmentally normal play, which resulted in an increased vulnerability towards committing violent acts, which I found fascinating. So, if by the age of 5 we're already at 80% of our creative potential, what happens as we age? Well, by 12 years old, we're already down to 2% of our creative potential. And then, as we continue to grow, it seems to decline more and more. And why is this? Besides the obvious, neurocognitive changes that I don't know much about, I have some ideas of my own that I'm going to talk about. First, I think it's because we enter the modern world and we are told to grow up, which is associated with all work and no play. We're told, playtime is over, no more recess. We enter the school system and we're taught right from wrong and black and white. And anything in the middle, anything in that gray area isn't quite the right way to go. And in order to live in society, we must follow the values and the rules that society holds. Then there's the factor of unpredictability. So David Straker is a researcher in the UK, and he does a lot of research with creative people. He has a quote about creative people that I enjoy. He says, when someone is being creative, they're also being rather unpredictable, which can make living with them an uncertain and almost threatening experience. So we are taught not to scare people with our creative thoughts. I am certain that if you were to view my VHS tapes tonight, that it would scare you to death. And most of society. That would be your reaction, right? Then there's critical thinking. And a lot of times people think of creativity and playfulness as opposite of critical thinking. And that critical thinking is reserved for engineering and business, and that creativity is reserved for just the performing arts or music. And that's just not true. Creativity is a structured approach to exploration. It's a way of having original ideas that have value in any profession. Then there's the factor of embarrassment. A lot of times we become embarrassed of sharing our creative thoughts with others. Another researcher, Bob McKim, who did a lot of research in the 80s and 90s, he did an experiment with his students in which he would give them a pencil and a piece of paper, and he would have them draw the person sitting next to them in about 20 to 30 seconds. And then after they were done, he would make them show the person that drawing. And as you can imagine, this always ended in laughter and discomfort, embarrassment, silence, shame. But if you do the same experiment with kids, it's not the same result at all. The kid will show the other kid the drawing with no embarrassment and pride, right? Think about your niece or nephew or your grandson or even your own children showing you their latest art project. It might look something like this, right? Finger painting, the next Picasso, but they're not afraid. And that shows me that as we age, we become more sensitive to the opinions and judgments of others, and we become easily embarrassed, specifically about our creative thoughts. And then there's self-editing. So in my early 20s, I performed and traveled around the world with different jobs, and when I moved to Perrysburg, I actually opened up a performing arts studio for kids. And in those classes, we would play a lot of games, improvisation games, to help them build confidence, improve their acting skills. And one of the games that we would play is called What Is This? And it's involving props. And so the kids would choose a different prop, like a hat, a mat, a bat. I rhymed, that was playful. And I would ask them, what is this? What can this be used for besides its purpose? And so, for instance, you or I might see this red baseball cap right here, and we might say, well, that's used for to protect from the sun's rays. Yes, that's correct, good. But kids can go on for minutes and minutes, and they can come up with a bunch of different ideas. So these are ones that I've actually heard in class. You can put it over your face to protect from gas fumes. You can put it on a doorknob to protect antique doorknobs. Yes. You can put soup in it if you don't have bowls. And the list goes on and on. And it's the same thing when you give a kid a toy and they play with the box instead, and they come up with 100 of different, options to play with that box. So really, kids don't self-edit. They can have a lot of ideas that are very similar in nature, but they don't edit those, and they'll show us those ideas. And as adults, sometimes we tend to edit those because we want to have the most original of all ideas. And so if it's similar to someone else's, we may not say it. So above all, I want to encourage you as adults, and anyone in this room, to play. Because as we age, we don't lose the need for novelty or pleasure, although sometimes we think we do. From a physiological standpoint, play is one of our greatest resources. It reduces stress by releasing endorphins. It improves brain function, memory, and thinking skills. And then from a practical standpoint, using play and improvisation strategies in our workplace can make us better adapt, innovate, and improvise in whatever occupation we have. We can see endless potential in whatever project that we're working on. And then from a social standpoint, people who use play in their relationships or have a playful mindset have stronger and healthier relationships and are better able to overcome obstacles within their relationships. And then think about the workplace where we spend most of our time. We all know that one fun person that we all gravitate towards at the water cooler. You know what I'm talking about? This guy, right? Why do we do that? Because we love playful people. We love fun people, even if we may not, act that way ourselves. So you're asking me, but how do we do this, right? How do we just play? We can't quit our jobs and go running rampant through the park, right? Well, you could. But you need to change your mindset about play. So give yourself permission to play. Surround yourself with playful people, whether that means scheduling a game night with your family, whether that means, with your work colleagues, you go bowling, or even just like a simple exchange and a joke with someone in that extremely long elevator ride. Also, increase your playfulness in the workplace by involving playful materials as well. So think about your workplace. I'm sure the most important thing you have is a pink sticky note, and that's your toy, right? But think about changing your color vocabulary with your different pens. Think about putting a fun picture in your office, or maybe a quote that makes you laugh, or even something tactile like a stress ball, right? And then there's 3 important factors that I want to talk about tonight that I've learned through my experience playing as a young child and through my training in theater and psychology as well. And the first is improvisation. And so improvisation, as you may know, is basically making something up as you go along, right? And so in a theater context, this might look like 2 people doing an acting exercise, okay? The first actor might be sitting there and waiting for the bus. Oh, what a lovely day. And the second actor says, no, not really. Well, as you can see, that really didn't go anywhere, right? So what we're going to think about is the number 1 rule in improvisation, and that is always say yes and, okay? So in the first scenario, that didn't really go anywhere. The actor didn't say yes and ... That actor said no. And so the same thing we can apply to our lives. Think about like this. If your neighbor came over and asked, hey, do you want to go for a walk? And you said, well, I'd love to, but I have a lot of laundry to do and the weather's not great, so maybe next weekend we can do that or something. That's saying no. But what if you thought about saying yes and, just like we do in improvisation? So that neighbor asks you, do you want to go for a walk in the park? And you say, yes, and I'll bring my dog, right? So in using this strategy of saying yes and, we are following other ideas without judgment, we're fostering collaboration, and we're seeing things from a different point of view. So think about that. It's very important. The second concept I want to talk about is visualization. And we all know visualization. It can be used in theater, business, sports, and it is basically a technique for increasing effectiveness in whatever task that we're doing. A story I like to share is that I'm sure most of you know, there's a story of Natan Sharansky, was a famous Israeli politician, and he was imprisoned for 9 years in a Soviet prison camp because he was accused of spying for the US. And every day in solitary confinement, he visualized and played mental chess in his head. And when he was released in 1996, he beat the world chess champion, Garry Kasparov. It's a very powerful tool. And so I want you to use this kind of an adult-like way of pretending in your head as a tool for increasing effectiveness in your life. So think about using visualization when you need to give your next TED Talk, or when you need to navigate through that anxiety-provoking grocery store trip. You can use visualization as a tool. The third concept I want to talk about tonight is, seems very easy, but it's of pretending, it's of rehearsal. Let me explain. So in acting, we use rehearsal and pretending as a tool to help us prepare for our final production, for the performance, right? But there actually is psychology behind it. And there was a very famous therapist who created what's called Gestalt therapy. In this type of therapy, there are various different techniques. One of them is called the empty chair technique. And this is where a client is rehearsing and pretending a scenario with someone who's not there. So that chair is empty. But that person is working through their issues with someone who's not there, be it a deceased relative, a partner, a boss, someone you're having an argument with. And in this way, you're working through and pretending and going through the situation before you actually do it. And in this way, you're increasing empowerment in yourself, you are analyzing your communication skills, and you're seeing all the different points of view of what could happen in this scenario if you were to do it in real life. And so you can use this technique of rehearsal and pretend with no one's there. You can use this in your real life. Maybe when you have to tell your boss that you're not going to be in on Monday, or maybe your mother-in-law that you're not going to be there for Christmas this year, something like that, right? So these are really powerful tools that you can use and in your daily lives. So above all, what I want you to get out of this talk tonight is I want to encourage you to play. And if nothing else, change your mindset about play through these tips and these techniques that I talked about: visualization, improvisation, and pretending, rehearsal. These are very important tools, because the world would be a very different place had we not the innovative and creative and playful people that invented these items that you see here tonight on the screen. The world would be a very different place, and it all started with play. And so above all, do something for its own sake. Do something pleasurable. Do something voluntary, something that takes you out of time and offers a sense of engagement. And above all, remember that the act itself is more important than the outcome. Thank you.